Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier, with a presentation that asks why solidarity succeeded when the protests in Hungary and Czechoslovakia, as well as elsewhere, had failed. It was in August 1980 that the workers in the Lenin shipyards in Gdansk formed a new trade union, Solidarity. They were led by Lech Walesa, an electrician who had been sacked from the yards for his trade union activity. They barricaded themselves into the yards and presented the government with 21 demands. These included well-formed traditional workers' rights, like the right to form free and independent trade unions, and the right to strike, as well as demands like more pay and improved welfare benefits. They actually demanded the same as the police and party workers got. But they also included more political demands, like the election of factory managers, an end to censorship, and a demand for the broadcasting of church services. They would go on to persistently demand free elections. Jump forward to June 1989, and Poland held elections, 1/3 of which were contested. Solidarity won all of the seats it was free to contest. This left Poland with a communist government that the Polish people clearly didn't support. But Solidarity didn't have enough seats to form a government. Walesa refused to join a coalition with the communists, and instead negotiated with other parties, allowed in the communist-dominated 2/3 of the parliament, and formed a coalition of his own making. Wojciech Jaruzelski, who had taken over as Prime Minister near the end of 1981 and became Chairman of the Council of State in 1985 and President in 1989, accepted a new government, with Tadeusz Mazowiecki, a non-communist, as Prime Minister. And soon, Lech Walesa would become the first non-communist President of Poland. Now a lot went on between 1980 and 1989, which isn't the focus of this presentation. But we are still left needing to explain just how Solidarity achieved what the Hungarians and Czechs and others had failed to achieve. Context is always a key factor in explaining why things happened. And first, I want to turn to a context I'm pretty sure you will not be very familiar with. Before Solidarity was formed, the Soviet Union was led by Leonid Brezhnev. You'll know that. He had led the Soviet Union since 1964, but long before his death in 1982, he was unfit to lead anything. He had been a heavy smoker until the 1970s and had become addicted to sleeping pills and tranquilizers. He was also a heavy drinker. From 1973 until his death, he suffered several minor strokes, and in 1975 he suffered his first heart attack. On occasion, he suffered from memory loss as well as speaking problems. After suffering another stroke, also in 1975, his ability to lead the Soviet Union was decidedly questionable. The Ministry of Health kept doctors by Brezhnev's side at all times, and he was brought back from near death on several occasions. When he died in 1982, Yuri Andropov took over, but he was only ever seen as a transitional leader and actually didn't last long. He died of kidney failure in 1984. Konstantin Chernenko took over from him, but only lasted 13 months. Chernenko had started smoking at the age of 9 and was a heavy smoker as an adult. Long before becoming General Secretary, he had developed emphysema and had a serious heart problem. He died of a combination of chronic emphysema, an enlarged and damaged heart, congestive heart failure, and liver cirrhosis. So there were serious problems with the Soviet leadership. At the time, solidarity was becoming a force in Poland. 3 old guard, aging, and very sick leaders. This brings us to Mikhail Gorbachev, who took up the reins in 1985. He was not of the old guard, nor was he aging, nor was he sick. But he was fully aware that things had gone badly wrong in the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc as a whole, and that they could not continue in the same vein. He knew things had to change, and he was determined to bring about change. And if the Eastern European states didn't do the same, well, they could be left to sort out their own problems. The Soviet Union was not going to intervene. Gorbachev repeatedly made this clear. Poland then would have to deal with solidarity in the knowledge that there wouldn't be a military solution as there had been in Hungary in 1956 or Czechoslovakia in 1968. We must then consider the Polish context. Given Poland's history, we have to understand that Polish nationalism, and with it resentment of Soviet control, was particularly strong. Poland was carved up by the great powers in the 18th century, notably Austria, Prussia, and Russia. Then it was given a fresh start by the Paris peace treaties, only to be divided up again as a result of the Nazi-Soviet pact, subjected to total Nazi control as they swept eastwards, only to end up as part of the Soviet bloc as the Nazis were in turn pushed back. Catholicism was also strong in Poland, and the communist repression of the Catholic Church was bitterly resented. And from 1978, the Catholic Church was led by a Polish Pope. And only briefly did the Polish communist economy ever raise hopes for a decent standard of living. There were already food and fuel shortages when in the summer of 1980 the government increased the price of meat, and strikes broke out all over the country, and small independent trade unions, including Solidarity, were formed. The photograph on this slide actually shows a food queue in the late 1980s. So, let's end with a look at Lech Wałęsa's contribution. He was an astute politician. He at first worked with the government to control the more radical wing of Solidarity, lest they provoke the Soviet Union to send in tanks. This, of course, is pre-Gorbachev. He was against Solidarity's 1981 statement of sympathy and support for all the downtrodden peoples of the Soviet bloc and to all the nations of the Soviet Union, which, as you know, led to a crackdown. But he kept Solidarity a force to be reckoned with. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1983, and by 1988 officials from foreign governments visited Lech Walesa, treating him as the leader of a government in waiting. He had successfully steered Solidarity and himself to power. So, as always, I hope that proves useful to you. And as always, I do thank you for listening. If you haven't already done so, do please subscribe to my YouTube channel and make me feel loved. Good luck with your studies. But for now, cheers.